Thanks for tuning in to PodCatalyst, the official podcast of IABC. Today we're bringing back our In Under 10 series, where we talk about trends and issues impacting the world of communications in 10 minutes or less. In this episode and a few others in the coming months, you'll hear from my colleague Dawn De La Torre. She was on the ground at IABC World Conference in Vancouver and caught up with a few of our expert speakers on some of the topics and issues that matter most to them. So in this episode, you'll hear from Juli Holloway, SCMP, IABC Fellow, and Communications Advisor at the Tulo Center of Indigenous Economics. She and Dawn are talking about the ways Indigenous-led communication methods can help build those authentic, cross-cultural relationships, which is so critical in today's global communications landscape. While the practice of Indigenous-led communications is not new by any means, the awareness and the importance of it around it has certainly grown beyond Indigenous populations. So Juli takes the moment with us to offer a lot of great practical insights that everyone can learn from. A special thanks to Juli for joining us and sharing her work widely at World Conference, as well as this episode. So with that, let's get started with the show.
Hi, Juli. Thanks so much for joining me today to talk about Indigenous-led methods for meaningful connection. I'm really looking forward to this conversation and the insights you'll be sharing.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Do you want to go into any background or set up this conversation, or do you want to jump right in?
Sure. I think it's so interesting to be at this time and place in our collective conscious where we're able to have a panel around Indigenous-led communications at World Conference. It wasn't too many years ago when there wasn't even this kind of verbiage around what Indigenous-led communications is. Like, I've been doing this work for a long time. It's been a passion of mine, but it's been quite lonely at times, not able to connect with other Indigenous communicators. I did my Master of Arts in Professional Communication a few years ago in 2014 and 15, and I did my thesis on the role of communications to advance self-determination and nation building in First Nations. So this has been an area of particular interest for me for a long time, but when I started in my career very early on, I wasn't able to connect with other people, and I also, communications didn't have it wasn't regarded by First Nations the way that it is now. So more people are understanding the value of communications, and then so we're able to kind of advance that conversation even more and now look to what does it mean to do communications from an Indigenous perspective. And for me, it's just, I'm living the dream.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that background. And I feel like that really set us up for a great conversation. So Indigenous-led methods are known to offer communication strategies for building those authentic relationships. Is there one approach that helps create these meaningful connections across diverse communities? But also feel free to share as many approaches as you need. I know it's hard to kind of narrow it down.
Yeah, thank you. I think now that I've had the opportunity to connect with other Indigenous colleagues and really talk about what it means to do communications from an Indigenous perspective, one of the commonalities that we all share is that we really see the work that we do as being in service to the communities that we work with. And so for us, the relationship between and among First Nations really is important to us. For some Indigenous communicators, they are related to the people that they're doing communications for. So there's that sense of a real purpose behind it. So for any communicator, Indigenous or non, when you're working in these types of spaces, it's really important, I believe, to reflect on the ideal relationship with the communities you're working with, and then letting that serve as your North Star, guiding the decisions that you make when you're thinking about, this idea or strategy. Will this increase trust, and will this foster a good relationship with the people that I'm working with? And when you're able to make that your focus, everything else will seem to fall in place when you're prioritizing that relationship. I think it's really important to lead with empathy. I feel really strongly that the solutions to Indigenous issues lie within the hearts and minds of Indigenous people. So it's not up to anybody else to solve these problems for Indigenous people or other equity-seeking groups. What we can really do as communicators is be a catalyst to help them bring their visions and their dreams to life. One of the things that really sticks out to me when we're doing this type of work is that Indigenous groups and other equity-seeking groups don't need saviors, they need supporters. So when we let go of ego and we lead with empathy and we really see ourselves as bringing the skills to achieve what they're trying to achieve, I think that's where the magic lies.
Awesome. I think that was a really powerful example, and it shows how meaningful connection can be built through care, intention, and a deeper understanding of others. So taking that idea just a step further, as communicators, many of us are working in increasingly diverse or even global environments. These spaces often come with complex cultural dynamics and historical context. What makes conversations about Indigenous communication methods especially important for communicators working in those kinds of settings today?
One of the important considerations, I think, when you're doing this type of work is to recognize that growth and comfort are mutually exclusive. Growth requires you to be uncomfortable, and in Canada in particular, we are on this journey of reconciliation and really trying to figure out what it means to coexist in a country where we have settlers and Indigenous people living kind of side by side. None of us knows what it looks like to live in a decolonial Canada, so we're all trying to figure it out together. And so with that comes mistakes or missteps because we don't know what it's like to live in a country that doesn't have the historical track record that we've had. So we're trying to figure it out together. There's non-Indigenous and Indigenous communicators working on this, how we reconcile, how we move forward together, knowing that we're all going to be here from now until we move on into the future. These conversations, I think, are an important opportunity to shine a light on blind spots that people might not know are there, and by widening and deepening perspectives around these issues. Understanding these issues can help you avoid making mistakes that might jeopardize these relationships that you're working to foster. And I think these are lessons that are transferable to any other community, especially equity-seeking groups.
Awesome. I think that's a meaningful reminder, especially as we strive to move beyond those surface level inclusion towards a real understanding and relationship building with other people. So thank you for that. So can we talk about more how this translates into day-to-day communication work for communicators aiming to create more inclusive and socially impactful work? What's one tool or approach they can adopt right now?
I think one of the biggest things that anybody can do that's doing this type of work is to integrate the voices and perspectives of the people you're aiming to serve as early in your project as possible. So when you don't have a preconceived idea of what a campaign should look like or what a communications plan should look like, when you're able to build in those voices of these Indigenous groups in this example, it can really change the event or the campaign or the messaging in ways that you might not imagine, because that's what happens when you create space for these groups. So integrating those voices early, understanding that this work then might take more time, it might cost more money, but it's ultimately going to help more people. So with that just becomes a need to be a little bit more flexible in your approach, in your timeline, in maybe, your thoughts and your ideas are going to evolve when you start to include those voices. And I think the other thing is to know that this is a journey, and that as long as you're able to kind of reflect at key points and ask yourself, is the work that I'm doing actively supporting the emancipation and empowerment of the people that I'm seeking to serve? When you're able to say yes more than you say no, you're going to be making a bigger difference than you know.
That's a really great suggestion. I think it gives communicators something concrete to act on and a way to start making their work more grounded and intentional. So Juli, thank you again for sharing your time, knowledge, and perspective. You've given us a lot to think about and a clearer sense of how communication can honor culture, build trust, and create lasting impact. I know I've taken a lot away from this conversation, so I hope you had a great time joining me here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to PodCatalyst, the official podcast of IABC. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Have a suggestion for a future episode? Send us a note at catalyst@iabc.com. To discover all IABC has to offer, visit our website at iabc.com. Until next time.